The Hawai'i Sports Radio Network on 95.1 FM and AM 760 presents Wake Up in the Den with Ku'ule Agbayani.
Good morning, beautiful people. It's Wake Up in the Den. I'm Ku'ule Agbayani alongside Michael Lescaro. Happy Aloha Monday on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM, AM 760, hawaiisportsradio.com, and streaming live on our YouTube channel like we do this and every Monday. But you can always listen every weekday morning from 8 to 10, and we appreciate you guys. Now, we have a very fun football-centric show coming up for you as we have UH football defensive tackles coach Jeff Reinbold scheduled to join us. There was a team meeting this morning because he kind of has to do and prioritize his actual job here, but we appreciate him for taking the time to come hang out with us in the studio. So he is en route, and he should be here maybe in about 10 minutes or so. So hang tight. Get set up and go into the YouTube. You guys can get your questions ready in the live chat. You can text us throughout the show at 808-888-KG1. That's 808-888-5481 if you do want to get in on the conversation. So very fun show again with Jeff Reinbold scheduled to join us in a little bit as he's en route following his early morning team meetings as this week is Mountain West Media Days in Las Vegas, and then next week is officially when they're going to start to report for fall camp, and football season is here. So I'm really excited that we are going to have this opportunity to really chat about football and really get to know a little bit more about Coach Jeff Reinbold. He is someone that has a plethora of coaching experience all over, not just all over the country, but all over the world. So it'll be fun to kind of pick his brain through all his experiences. And of course, probably the most pressing thing, maybe not pressing thing, but most interesting thing that I think a lot of fans will be wanting to hear about is his real firsthand experience of the glory years of University of Hawai'i football and the undefeated season and Coach Brennan and that era of UH football. So we're really excited to have him. Again, he should be here in about 5 or 10 minutes. So probably in the next segment, we can plan to welcome him in. But first, it'll give us at least a chance, Michael, to tell everybody about some of the picks that went on yesterday and today, early this morning via the Major League Baseball draft. Again, the first couple of rounds happening yesterday. Shout out to shortstop Iva Arquette out of St. Louis High School. And of course, Oregon State selected 7th overall yesterday by the Miami Marlins. Not too far after him, he had shortstop Vehiva Aloy via Baldwin, and Arkansas, the 2025 Golden Spikes winner, 31st overall. He was selected by the Baltimore Orioles, the highest draft pick ever from Maui, following Kurt Suzuki in 2004. He was selected 67th. Shout out to Rob Colias for that little fun fact. This happening this morning. You had Bruin Agbayani out of St. Louis and a Michigan commit, 179th overall pick by the Minnesota Twins, and center fielder Matt Miura out of Marino and the University of Hawaii, 180th overall by the St. Louis Cardinals. And that's perfect timing because I'm getting the call by Jeff Reinbold. I will kick it to you, Michael, to kind of talk about this Major League Baseball draft a little bit.
Yeah, and the draft is still going. You know, we got, I think, Iva Arquette getting drafted 7th overall. That was huge for the state because he is, was the highest draft pick. That's Hawaii-born player. So that's kind of awesome to see. So, and the thing is, I knew Iva more for being a really strong basketball player. In his senior year at St. Louis, he was the player of the year in basketball. And I remember he had this pretty good putback dunk in the state championship game against Mililani. So while Ku's gone, I'm going to pick on Mililani here. But, it was great. And what's kind of cool about Iva is that, when he was in high school, he was kind of a lanky fellow. He didn't really look like a ball player because he was so lanky. But now that he's kind of matured as a young man, he's able to put on some frame, and he looked solid when he was down here with Oregon State against Hawaii. You could tell hey, this guy's definitely gonna go number one. For Vehiva Aloy getting drafted at 31st, I think some mocks drafted him or had him pegged a little bit earlier in the draft, maybe in the teens. Ku, I don't know why Ku's getting Jeff Reinbold gets set up. It's Ku's Cubs. She likes to talk about her Cubs, but the Cubs couldn't draft the local boy, and he went 31st. In what is a confusing first round, we're just gonna call it the first round because I don't know how the MLB has its. I mean, MLB has its weird rules, so we're just calling it the first round. But yeah, that was cool for Vahiva Aloy. Kind of sucks though that he was the best. He had the best defensive player in college baseball with the Golden Spikes Award, but the young kids out of high school are getting drafted ahead of him. I mean, I get it.
That was weird.
They have more prospects, but come on, guys. I guess maybe if Arkansas baseball wasn't cursed and they maybe won, the World Series, then that would have been awesome, and maybe he had a higher draft stock. But come on, guys, these youngins, I don't know.
Either way, we will keep track on whether or not more either born here, Hawaii-born student athletes or athletes, and those that went to the University of Hawaii, if they end up on any other teams. We will keep you guys updated. Make sure you follow us on social media at High Sports Radio. All right, the moment you guys have actually all been waiting for. So I'm so happy that he could join us and hanging out with us in studio today for the summer as we are gearing up for Mountain West Media Days coming up this week. And then next week, they're reporting for fall camp, but appreciative that he could take the time after his early morning start following a team or unit meeting. Jeff Reinbold is in studio with us. Hello, Coach Jeff. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, cool.
I feel like it's been months in the making, right? We've been talking about this, you coming out in studio, and I'm so happy that it came through fruition and you are here.
Like I say, it's my pleasure. And anytime you can represent the University of Hawaii and our program, it's a blessing.
Yeah, that mic gets kind of finicky, so we got to use the coach's voice for a little bit, so all the beautiful people can hear you, because they hear Michael and I, and of course when Paul's here, they hear us talk all the time. They want to hear from you. We're going to pick your brain about all of your experiences from coaching, talk about that 06-07 time in Hawai'i football. I know that will always live in the memories of a lot of football fans, not just here, but all across the country. It's just such a recognizable time in Hawai'i football. But I kind of want to start from the beginning, Coach Jeff, and just kind of get to learn a little bit more about you and your background. So if you can just share, and again, I know this is on the internet, but I like to just throw it out there and have our guests answer it. But just tell us a little bit about where you're originally from and a little bit about your general upbringing.
Well, it's interesting what you talking about the baseball draft when I walked in here, because, my dad was in professional baseball for about 30 years, and we bounced from every dugout from Coos Bay, Oregon to Bradenton, Florida. And listening to Michael talk about those guys getting drafted and what they're about to endure as young athletes to go on the road and all those long bus rides and all, that's really such a unique blessing and such a great thing for those kids. But that's the way I grew up. I was a coach's kid, was lucky enough to have had a bunch of people in my life and in my career, help me along the way. And it's been a tremendous, tremendous ride. And I don't want to see it end anytime soon, but I've really been really fortunate. And everybody's life is made up of the experiences and the people that you meet, and I've certainly had more than my share of great people in my life.
Well, so that's interesting then. If you grew up around baseball, how did you find yourself getting into football? And obviously have spent the probably more than half of your life duration now with being involved in football. But tell us a little bit about how you got into football now.
Well, I tell you what, the fact of the matter was we had 5 kids, and my mom said to my dad at one point that, hey, you can go chase your baseball thing, but these kids, we were all teenagers at the same time. She said they need roots, and they need to, have a place to call their own. So her parents were from South Bend, Indiana, and we moved into a little house close enough to Notre Dame Stadium that on Saturday mornings you could hear the band, you could hear, you could get a feel of what it was like. You'd hear the crowd roar, and when Notre Dame would score a touchdown, and they'd play the victory march. And so as a little boy, the natural outgrowth of that was to start playing football and, in the neighborhood. And then I went to high school and was really, like I said, really lucky to have a great high school coach who was really influential in my life. And I think, if I was a dime store psychologist, I think I would probably say that, football created my own thing. Because in baseball, whenever I did anything in baseball, I was always Jim's kid, and that was my dad. And when I did something in football, it was kind of my own accomplishment, and so I think probably that's what gravitated me there. Then I had a really unique experience my junior year in high school. Jerry DiNardo, who would go on and be the head coach at, excuse me, at Vanderbilt and LSU and Indiana and a number of schools. He was just finishing his career at Notre Dame. He was an All-American guard at Notre Dame. He student taught at my high school my junior year. And then he went off to the University of Maine to start his coaching career. Came back. His brother Jerry was an attorney in town, had been an All-American at Notre Dame too. Came back and ran into my mother, and he asked what I was doing about college. And my mom's response was, "Oh, I hope he's going." I was a little bit of a knucklehead, and so that ended up was how I got to the University of Maine, and then just a number of like chain reaction things have happened in my career, and I've been, like I said, way more lucky than good.
What position did you play when you first started playing football and throughout as you were growing up?
Like I was like most kids on their high school team. Usually, one of your better athletes you put at quarterback. So I started out as a quarterback. Then I went to college. I got moved to slot back and played there my freshman year, and then my sophomore year. Jack Bicknell, my college coach, said, "I think he's got more of a defensive personality." Then I went over and played safety the rest of my career.
That's interesting. And that kind of emulates your coaching career as well, because you've coached on both sides of the football. So that's kind of a good start, is having that playing experience and to start off with on both sides, and then I like that defensive personality.
Well,
what does that entail?
Well, I think it means you're a little bit goofy. And because I love to play. Like, I loved everything about the game. I loved practice. I loved the weight room. I loved, all the work, the film, all of it. And, I had no career choice. I mean, like, I had no career plan. Like, like Mao Zedong had a 5-year plan. I had a 5-minute plan. I was just an ADD kid. And I was walking past Jack's office my senior year, and about 6 games left to go, and I ruptured a bicep tendon in my shoulder, and I was trying to play through that, and he called me in and he said, "What are you going to do when this is over?" And I was like, "Over? He goes,
"It's not going to be over."
He goes, "Yeah, you got 6 more weeks to play this game," and he said, "I know how much you love football." He said, "I think coaching would be a great thing for you to do." So I went home. I called my dad, and again, like I said, my dad had been in pro baseball about 26 years at that time. And I said, "Dad, I think I know what I want to do." And when there was like dead silence. I think he dropped the phone, picked up the phone, and I said, "I think I want to coach." And he went into like a 5-minute diatribe about there's no money in it, there's no, it's hard on families, it's da-da-da-da. But what he was doing was trying to be a dad to make sure that I understood what I was getting myself into. And he said to me, and I remember this so well, he said, "Coaching's not something you can do halfway. You're either in or you're out. And if you're going to be in, this is what it entails." And like I said, all my whole career, I've been really, really fortunate to have been around good people who helped me along the way.
No wonder we get along so well, because it's like for a long time too, I'm like, I don't know what I know what kind of interests me, but we'll see what happens and where this funny thing we call life takes me. All right, we're joined in studio by UH football defensive tackles coach Jeff Reinbold. If you guys want to get in on the conversation, feel free as well, either via the YouTube or our at text line at 808-888-KG1. That's 808-888-5481. But we do need to take a break, so we'll be right back on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network.
Wake Up in the Den with Ku'ulei Agbayani on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760.
Welcome back to Wake Up in the Den. Ku'ulei Agbayani, Michael Liscaro, and joined in studio by UH football defensive tackles coach Jeff Reinbold. And I asked you during the break, and I'm excited because you're going to share your time with us all the way up until 10 o'clock. So we've got a lot to talk about, and I love it because, like I said, you have so much experience just as a player, coaching, and then life experience.
Whoa, now easy on that. Nah, I'm not that old.
It's a good thing. No, but from the coaching standpoint, because you like I mentioned earlier in the first segment, you don't only have experience here in this country, but you're like an international, Mr. Worldwide, I guess we could say at that point, Jeff Reinbold. So that's why I'm curious to get into all of your not only coaching, but I feel like you are also have experience on being on this side of the microphone, doing like shows and podcasts and everything. So we've got a lot to talk about, but we're talking a little bit about how you got into the sport of football in the first segment. Now we want to transition into your coaching career. So as you mentioned, you had to figure out what you were going to do after playing was done, and you thought, hey, maybe I'll just get into coaching. So kind of tell us how your first time coaching experience went, and when you realized for sure that yes, like you were in it now, because it's one thing, right, when you tell yourself like, oh, I want to do this, and then you do it, and then sometimes people are like, maybe not, and your dad tried to paint that picture for you, like this is what it is. If you're going to be a coach, I'm painting that realistic picture of what it entails. But when you started to get into it, when was it that moment where you're like, this is for sure what I want to do?
Well, I think that's a big question, but I remember when Jack Bicknell had just gotten a Boston College job, and he said, Jeff, I'll take you with me as a graduate assistant to Boston College, but I don't think that's in your best interest. He said, I'm going to give you some things that I think you need to understand if you're going to go into this business. And I know your personality, you'll want to go as far as you can go. He said, first of all, wait on a family. He said, second of all, don't go to high school and coach in high school because college football was changing at that time. And he said, you're going to go to high school and you'll have to win 100 games to get yourself to a college job. He said, the best way to get into the business is to go and be a graduate assistant. And he said, I'll take you to Boston College with me. But, again, I think you need to get out and create a national contact base, which was really, really good advice. And he kind of pushed this book across his desk at me. It was called The Blue Book of College Athletics. And he said, write in there to every school and tell them that you want to become a graduate assistant. So I write 75 letters and get back 74 no's. And one letter came back. I got to the point, where I didn't even have to open the letter. I just knew how much it weighed. It was a rejection.
It's like applying for college.
Yeah. And so I get one letter back from a guy named Gil Krieger, who was the head coach at New Mexico State at the time. And he said, it was a rejection letter, but he had written over the top of it, he said, I don't have any positions on my staff at this time. However, one of my assistants just got the job at Western Montana. He said, he's looking for assistants. So the guy's name was Don Christensen. I got a hold of Coach Chris, and we did an on-the-phone interview because Western Montana ain't flying guys out for interviews. But we did an interview over the phone, and he called me back about 3 weeks later after the interview, and he said, well, I've decided to give the job to a guy that was a quarterback here a couple of years ago. He's a high school coach in Eastern Montana, and he wants to get his master's degree. And so that's what I've done. So now that was the 75th no, and it's now June, I think, late June, and I've graduated from college, and I've got no idea what I want to do. So I'm thinking, well, I'll join the Peace Corps. So at that time, I was headed to put wells in West Africa, and that's a true story. I was on my way to. I was getting to the point where I had to go get my tetanus shots and all the the shots you got to take to go to Africa, and he called me back. Coach Chris called me back, and he said that the guy's wife had gotten pregnant. They decided that right now as a family that they needed the income, so he kept his high school job. Do you still want this graduate assistantship at Western Montana? And I said, Coach, I'll be out there in 4 days. So I loaded up my orange van, drove to Montana, and I drive into Dillon, Montana, which was about 2,000 people in an orange van. I got hairs down to the middle of my back.
We need those pictures.
I think the cops thought the Grateful Dead was coming to town or something because there was one policeman in the whole town, and he followed me around. I didn't know where the school was. It wasn't that hard to find because there weren't that many streets, but I didn't know where the school was, so I'm driving all over the place. And all of a sudden, I got John Law driving behind me real slow. And, I don't care who you are. You can have a completely clean driving record, but as soon as the police are behind you start thinking about what did I do? So I'm thinking I'm going to get pulled over my first day at work, but I eventually found the school, and that was my first job. We went 0-8-1. So when I go out recruiting, players would say, "Okay, well, what was your record last year?" They go, "Oh, we were 8-1." So I wasn't lying. I was telling the truth.
I like that. I like that. Hey, you got to do what you got to do.
Recruiting's tough now. It's competitive.
8-1. I like that.
Well, the internet didn't exist back then, so like no one could
Nobody
fact
could check. Now you got to, and again, Michael, this is Western Montana. But it's funny how life works. Like the first kid I ever recruited was a kicker from Kamloops, British Columbia. Excuse me, this letter had come, and Coach Chris throws it on my desk. He says, follow up on this, will you? And it was this kid who, Paul Osbaldiston, and as fate would have it, Paul would come to Western, he would kick there, then he'd go on and kick in the Canadian Football League for a number of years. And when I went to Hamilton in 2013 as the special teams coordinator, Paul Osbaldiston was my kicking coach, the guy that worked with the kickers for me. So I ended up not only recruiting the kid, but watching him become a pro player and then eventually having the opportunity to work with him on the same staff, which is really a cool thing.
Wow. You mentioned your time in Canada, the CFL league, right? Kind of jumping a little ahead from your college coaching career, but you got to coach in the CFL, and one of the players, and you mentioned Boston College earlier too. So one of the players I wanted to ask you about was Doug Flutie, because you got to see him in the CFL. But he was also kind of that player that was not the biggest guy, right? And then one of the concerns that some people may have with our current QB1, Mike Alejada, is his stature. So you got to see firsthand Doug Flutie kind of break that mold early on. So I guess can kind of talk about that experience, and as well as why that stature shouldn't be a concern with our current quarterback.
Well, I think there's a couple things, and this is really amazing that you're talking about this, because this is one of the things I talked to the kids about this morning in my meeting. We talk about a lot of stuff other than football, and I said one of the things, fellas, that you guys have to understand about the way life works and life as an athlete works is the easiest thing to get on you is a label, and the hardest thing to get off of you is that label. And I've been really, really blessed to have coached 4 different Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks. Now, I don't know how many guys can say that, but I've been able to do that. Doug was our quarterback in 1991 in BC with the BC Lions, and he threw for 6,900 yards, more than anybody has ever thrown before or since in professional football. And what was amazing, Michael, was that even with all of those yards, right? I mean, 6,900 is like an unbelievable number. We had 4,000-yard receivers. I mean, it was like crazy. But whenever Doug would get a pass deflected at the line of scrimmage, and I'm part of the media now, so I'm pointing the finger at myself. The low-hanging fruit is, well, he's too short, right? That's why he's not playing in the NFL. And it took Doug having to come up and dominate the CFL, win, I think, 3 Grey Cups, pass for more yardage than anybody in the history of the game, to get an opportunity to go back to Buffalo and then become a starter in the NFL, and then eventually go to San Diego and finish his career in San Diego. And it is that thing about, well, he's too short. Well, I'm going to tell you something. If you think Micah is too short, take the New Mexico film out and have an hour of fun, right? Just watching him run the offense. And, obviously there are certain parameters that you like an athlete to be, right? And I'm as guilty of it as anybody. I want a 6'3", 300-pound guy. But I also understand that the best defensive lineman that has played in the NFL in the last 20 years is Aaron Donald, and we played Aaron Donald when I was at SMU. He was at Pitt, and I remember seeing him walk on the field and going, "Who is now? Come on, man!" And then all of a sudden they snapped the ball, and it was like, "Oh, now I see it," And so that's what a guy like Mike is going to have to overcome his whole career, and but. In the end, in the final analysis, it's not how big you are, how fast you are, any of that, all the measurables go away when you play the game. And it's the same thing you were talking about the kids that got drafted. And the only advice I would give them if I ran into them on the street was, it doesn't matter where you're drafted. It doesn't matter what round, because when you stand in the batter's box, everybody's the same. First rounder and 31st rounder. You got to be able to perform. And if you perform well enough, consistently enough, over time, you're going to get the call, right? And I think that's what every athlete has to understand. I mean, yes, I wanted to be 6'2" too, but that didn't work out real good for me. But you overcome those things. And that's why I say every one of those four Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks, Andre Ware, Doug Flutie, Gino Torretta, all those guys, they all were different, right? The one consistency of all of them was they had performed at the highest level, right? Danny Werfel, when he was at Florida playing for Coach Spurrier, won the Heisman Trophy throwing corner routes. Well, you have to be able to perform. This is a performance-based industry, right? And, how you look in a uniform only gets you so far. When you put your hand in the dirt, and this is the thing we talk to the kids about all the time, when you put your hand on the ground and, it's now time to play, where you went to high school, how hard you were recruited, how many stars you got, that star thing drives me absolutely crazy because, they're objective awards that some guy watches you play how many times, and then he's going to anoint you with stars, right? I mean, it's created an industry is what it's created. And, I get it, but I also understand. I want to watch when I don't pay attention to how many stars the kids got when I watch them on tape, but couldn't care less, right? What I want to see is, does he fit the parameters for the position? Is he strong enough, big enough, or does he have the growth potential? And then also, how does he perform? How does he compete? What does he do when show me the tape when he's behind. Show me the tape when he's playing against the best player. All of those things tell you way more than, some write-up from some guy that, I'm not down in those guys. I'm just saying that, that's the reality. And again, I trust my eyes way more than I trust anybody else. I'll ask coaches, what do you think about the kid, just to get kind of a feel, but whether it's an overly positive or overly negative reaction that I get, I don't really care, because bottom line is you got to do it here when you come here to play for us and play in our room.
Yeah, and that's perfectly said. And I think it's more of a testament and a lesson to any parents of kids that focus overly too much on their star rating. I think that's what it is for the kids themselves. Don't get discouraged if your teammate has a higher star in the same position. None of that stuff really matters till you get to the next level. And it hurt to hear from Coach Jeff there. All right, we do need to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation about your coaching experience. And I want to get into just how you found yourself now here in Hawaii the first time around. And of course, talk about the 06-07 time in UH football that will forever live in everybody's memories here in Hawaii and all across the country, really. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back as we are joined in studio with UH Football defensive tackles coach Jeff Reinbold. We'll be right back on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network.
Back to more Wake Up in the Den with Ku'ule Agbayani on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760.
Welcome back to all of you, the beautifulest of all the beautiful people. It's Wake Up in the Den. I'm Ku'ule Agbayani alongside Michael Lascaro on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM, AM 760, hawaiisportsradio.com, and streaming live on our YouTube channel. And we have had a fun show so far, and the fun is not going to stop anytime soon as we are joined in studio by UH Football defensive tackles coach Jeff Reinbold. All right, Coach, you came back, obviously, to the University of Hawaii to coach here. And I want to go back in time, though, on what led you to the University of Hawaii in the first place.
Okay, before we go, I got to tell you that HHSA piece that you just run that every day. That is so important because, I it's just an incredible message about what parents really need to do to help their kids be better players, and it's support them and love them and cherish them and not push them. Oh, excuse me.
No, I totally understand. Definitely not push them, and all those not living through their kid is what we kind of tend to see a lot, and then let kind of the kids more of supportive and encouragement, like pushing them when they need to. I think even my upbringing, I had the good balance of parents that pushed me enough, but then all at the same time were very supportive and not trying to live what they thought was going to be their sports career through me back then.
Yeah, and we're all parents. I'm a parent certainly, and I remember with my sons and my daughter when they were making decisions about whether they want to be an athlete or not, I stepped away from that because I think it's so important that they do it because they want to do it. It's got to be, the drive has to come from them. And I see far more kids get burnout and you know, push too far and lose their love of the game, and ultimately all the way to the professional level. You've got to love the game, and I think that's to instill the love of the game for the game, not for the winning, not for the trophies, not for the star ratings, but for the love of the game. Man, that's a great message.
Mm-hmm. And okay, so and I want to ask you kind of the change of the love in the game a little later, maybe in hour number 2 with the world of college athletics as we are right now. So we'll get to that in hour number 2. But I want to go back to the conversation about your coaching career. And yeah, what brought you to the University of Hawaii the first time around?
All right. First of all, you got to understand that my relationship with this program really started back in the Dick Tomey days. And I still have, I lost my younger brother a couple weeks ago. And my other younger brother who lives on Kauai went back home and is going through all kinds of stuff. That my mother was a pack rat and she kept everything. And he found a letter that I got from Dick Tomey when I was a high school senior, because it was my dream. This is how people got to understand how big an impression college athletics makes on kids. I remember when the Fab Five, or the basketball team, played in the NIT tournament, and their uniforms were Hawaii, and then they had their shorts were like aloha print, right? And I remember being probably 12-year-old kid at that time and going, man, I want to go to school at that place someday, right? And then the whole mystique of Hawaii and all this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was a pretty good high school football. I was an all-state player in Indiana, but I wanted to go away from home. I wanted to come to Hawaii. I wrote Coach Tomey a letter, and I said, that I'd love to come to Hawaii. He wrote back and he said that we basically just recruit Hawaii and the Western states. We don't go that far away. However, if you would like to come and walk on, da-da-da. So I kept that letter forever, and this place has always had kind of a mystical draw to me. And then I came out here to do a watch. I was coaching at Edmonton in the CFL, and I got assigned to the Hula Bowl. And I came out to do the Hula Bowl, and it was the year that they had the Ponui game against the mainland kids, right? And it was a lot of the 92 team was in that game. Junior Tongwai, Joe Sayamalu, David Maeva. There was a ton of those guys. And I ended up signing about 6 of them out of that game. And those guys all came. And, Joe played for me, I think, 3 different places. Maeva played for me 3 different places. And so I always had a real affinity to the kids and the Polynesian kids. And that just continued on. And then when June got the job, I had met June when he was the head coach with the Falcons. And I'd gone, we were in training camp for NFL Europe, and we used the NFL facilities. So our team got assigned the Falcons facility, and June was out on the practice field one day when we were finishing up, and he was actually working out at defensive back, which I still kid him about because that's probably more time than he spent with the defensive back because he's an offensive guy all the way. And I went over to him, and I introduced myself because of some, the Hawaii connection, and we talked, and then I asked him if I could spend some time with his defensive coordinator, Rod Rust, and, June's such a great guy. I said, yeah. He said, just go tell Rod I said you could come in and sit with him as long as you wanted to. And, through that association, I always stayed in contact with him. Then I was working for the NFL in London, and my job was I was a senior director of international player development. So my job was to find international players all around because the NFL was just starting their initiative to bring in international players into the league after baseball and basketball had so much success with it. And it was a Czechoslovakian kid here, and I can't remember the kid's name. I just remember June referred to him as Frank the Czech, and so I called him to check up on this guy, and we started talking. And I had always been like a big fan of what June and Mouse did with the offense, with the run and shoot. So as part of my job, I got the NFL to send me the Hawaii games on tape. On Monday morning, I'd have the Hawaii game from Saturday night on my desk, and I was working in London at the time, in London, so I could watch every Hawaii game. So I watched all of Timmy's throws. I watched Rolo, all of it, right? And I was talking to June, and he mentioned that Mouse's wife had passed away, and Mouse and his wife had been together for over 40 years, and June's got such a big heart, so he basically takes care of Mouse. He brings him out here, and he puts him on the staff, and Mouse is obviously an asset to the staff, but I mean, I thought, oh God, you got the two really gurus of the run and shoot. Then all of a sudden, I pick up the Pro Football News, and I see that Jerry Glanville hired as defensive coordinator at the University of Hawaii, and I'm thinking like, oh, this is too good, right? I mean, this is like the triumvirate, right? Here because Jerry, I had been a big Jerry Glanville fan from the Houston days and the House of Pain and all that stuff, and so I called June and I said, June, I want to come work for you. And he said, well, Jeff, I don't have any jobs open. I said, I don't care. I'll volunteer. Because I thought I had saved enough money to come to Hawaii and volunteer. I found out real quick that that's not the case. But anyway, so he said, you can't volunteer because the NCAA has taken away the volunteer position thing. And I said, I don't care. I'll work in the equipment room. I don't care. I'll do anything. And he said, nah, I just don't have anything for you. So he called me back about a week later, and he goes, were you serious? And I said, June, I was serious as a heart attack. If I don't do this now with you, Jerry, and Mouse all on the same staff, then I'll regret it for the rest of my life. And he said, well, I can offer you a graduate assistant job. All right, now, I'm making well over 6 figures working for the National Football League, and then getting to coach in NFL Europe, coaching pro players and all that stuff. And I said, I'll take it. Strong negotiator that I am, I said, I'll take it. So I go home. I go home, and I tell my wife, hey, we're going to have a chance to move to Hawaii, right? Obviously, she's excited, like, wow, Hawaii, we can live in Hawaii. I said, yeah, I'm going to take a job at the University of Hawaii. And so called June again the next day. I said, oh, by the way, June, how much does that pay? He goes, $800. And I'm like, $800? God almighty, they really pay their coaches good in Hawaii. I thought it was $800,000. He said it was $800 a month. So that was my first job at Hawaii. I was a graduate assistant. I went to work towards a master's degree in Hawaiian studies, and I got $800 a month. And my wife was not too excited about the $800 a month part of that deal. But we came out here, and then after the first year, I got put on full time, and it was a tremendous, tremendous opportunity. Because, Mouse, I was a young defensive coordinator in pro football, and we're playing Mouse's team in Toronto, and I'm diagramming all the pass routes for the players. And I come to him after the game. I said, Coach, how in the heck can you teach? I had 179 different pass routes in my breakdown of you. And Mouse, in his beautiful way, he had this great voice. Yeah, kid, there's only 5 routes. And I went, what? He goes, there's only 5 routes in the offense. And so when I came, I said, Mouse, please teach it to me. And he said, it takes a lot of time. I said, I don't care how much time it takes. He goes, all right, I'll tell you what, kid. I'm getting so fat. If you'll walk with me around the track after practice, I'll teach it to you. So every day after practice, I was a defensive coach now. Every day after practice, we'd walk around Ching Field, and he would teach me the history and how he incorporated a book from a guy named Tiger Ellison, who was a high school coach in Ohio. Mouse was coaching high school football in Portland. He had to find a way to. He didn't have any players, so he had to find a way to move the football, and the run and shoot was born. And then he brings June after June had gone to Oregon, had to sit behind Dan Fouts, came here. Artie Wilson, his friend, told him, come here, play at Hawaii. They started to run the option, and June ain't no option quarterback. So he ends up going to Portland State and has a phenomenal 1-year ride with Mouse and turns it into an opportunity to make the Falcons and get into pro football. So all of that was just, and then having an opportunity to work with Jerry and realizing that the guy that I thought Jerry was, which was this, I thought this guy's going to be out all night and he's going to be running the streets and he's crazy and out of his mind. Well, he's crazy and out of his mind, but he is one of the smartest guys I've ever been around. And, his persona and who he is as a person are two completely different things, which was really a wonderful thing. And, my son was 10 years old at the time, and he was all over the Stan Sheriff Center. And after he'd get out of high school, or he'd get out of school at St. Louis, and he'd walk over and he'd run around with Kamale Correa's, and I'd lose him, right? He'd be gone. I'm trying to concentrate on football, and he's gone somewhere in the facility, and it was just typical Hawaii,
Mm-hmm.
The basketball coaches would have him, and they'd take care of him. He'd be down there shooting baskets, and then I'd find him in Jerry's office drawing pictures on Jerry's grease board. And one time I go down and he's sitting in June's office. We're in a game plan for Boise State, I think it was. He's sitting in June's office in the middle of the floor playing Nintendo on June's TV, and it's like that was one of the things that endeared me to this place, because it is it's about families, it's about people, it's about more than just the game.
Yeah, and I mean now it's kind of full circle again. You have the Chang gang that's running all over the place, along with the Sheffield kids and all the other coaches' kids. There's a ton that are running around there, and it's kind of almost reminiscent to that first time when you were out here, and it's kind of been that way throughout many years at Hawaii. And you're right, it's a lot of what makes Hawaii special is how much it is about just family, and that it is okay to have your families be intertwined with the program. Obviously, there are moments where we got to take it seriously and really focus on that game plan. But for the most part, it does have a different type of a feeling and atmosphere here at the University of Hawaii. All right, we do need to take one more quick break, at least in this hour. And then when we come back, we will just wrap up hour number 1. But we're so fortunate as Jeff Reinbold is here in studio, and he said he can stay all the way up until 10 o'clock. So we have way more to discuss and definitely want to get in to that 06 and 07 seasons and the glory days of seeing Colt Brennan and co just do their thing, and the reason why you kind of cashed in on that, took the risk, $800 a month to come out here, and then you were there for the glory that it was for University of Hawai'i football. But we'll be right back to close out hour number 1 on the Hawaii Sports Radio Network.
Agbayani on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760.
Welcome back to Wake Up in the Den. Kule Agbayani, Michael Iscaro, and we are joined in studio with the University of Hawai'i Football defensive tackles coach Jeff Reinbold. All right, since we only have about 4 or 5 minutes left in hour number one, I don't want to get heavily into that 06-07 time of UH football, but want to close out hour number one just picking your brain and getting a little insight into what the family life now is like with the University of Hawai'i Football program. As you mentioned, you're doing your first stint here, seeing your son kind of running all over the place, and we talked about how the Chang gang now is kind of, they have all of their kids, and I know that Sheffield's now have 4 kids, so there's a bunch of little children like all the keiki running around the offices. But just give us a little bit of an insight of how the offices are and that family environment that head coach Timmy Chang and of course his wonderful wife Sherry Chang, what they have instilled with the football program.
Well, I think it must be something in the water at the facility, because Pu'u Robinson just had a baby. Yeah. You know, PJ Manaya's got a young child, and the Ursuas have a bunch of kids, and Arsenals have a bunch of kids, and Derek Favi's got I mean, it's amazing how many children there are. And one of the things you really I love about Timmy and having the opportunity to work for Timmy is that he has maybe the best work-life balance that I've ever seen in a coach. And this business is not built that way, all right? This business is built to destroy families, not to encourage families. And, one of the things that he does is create an environment where for all the kids that there's that it's a children's safe zone, up in our offices. And I think that is really, really special. And one of the greatest things that he does, Timmy's a great people guy. He understands people. He understands the importance of relationships. He understands how important families are, because, there's a poignant picture of Tim taking the ball after he'd thrown for more yards than anybody in the history of college football over to his dad on the sideline. Not out in the middle of this, in the middle of the stadium, making it all about himself, but paying honor to his father by giving him the ball. And I think that's indicative of who he is. And, you watch the way that he and Sherry have incorporated that family into the experience. And, I know this from my own childhood that, I saw my dad at work, and I got to go to, work with my dad. And that's a really, really special time. And, whether it's their sons or their daughters, they're going to experience things and have an enriched life knowing what Dad did and watching Dad do what he did. And the Sheffields and, like I said, Derek and everybody else, now the old heads like me and Therm, we kind of just, we've raised our kids now. So it's kind of fun watching them come around and seeing that Timmy has created an environment in that on the third floor in our offices that is conducive to that. And I think that's really, really positive.
And I can attest to it, because I half the time when I go up to those offices, I'm like, whoa, dodge that kid. Whoa, okay, dodge this kid. But it is very just a warm, welcoming environment for sure. All right, we do need to take our break, but we'll be back for hour number 2 as we are joined in studio with UH football defensive tackles coach Jeff Reinbold. So a lot more to talk about. When we come back, we will definitely get into that golden era of UH football under quarterback Colt Brennan, that to this day, I mentioned it on the show the other day, if the NIL era was back then, Colt would have probably been the highest earning player ever for the University of Hawaii, even up to this point. So we'll be right back to talk about all that and more on the Hawaii Sports Radio Network.
Back to more Wake Up in the Den with Ku'ulei Agbayani on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760.
Welcome back to Wake Up in the Den, hour number 2. I'm Ku'ulei Agbayani alongside Michael Liscaro, and joining us in studio all the way up until 10 o'clock. We are so appreciative of his time because I feel like we really haven't even cracked into the surface of all of the things that we're talking about with football today. We have Football defensive line coach Jeff Reinbold in studio as you guys are listening on 95.1 FM, AM 760, HawaiiSportsRadio.com, and streaming live on our YouTube channel. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. You can chime in if you guys have anything to ask Coach Jeff at all throughout this hour number 2. Feel free to text in at 808-888-KG1. That's 808-888-5481. And what's the perfect timing of today and having you in studio, and as I was mentioning leading up into hour number 2, that we were going to talk about those pinnacle years of University of Hawai'i football, the 06-07 time period, undefeated season, all of that stuff. We'll forget about the Sugar Bowl a little bit, but nonetheless, still a feat. But if you guys have not seen it yet, we all know that at the beginning of July, the new partnership with University of Hawaii and Nike officially started. Well, on their social media today, they have finally released the uniforms for football. And you guys, like, chicken skin moment. You can ask Coach Jeff. I was telling him I looked it up. Thank you to Michael for making me aware of it. And I looked it up and I was like immediate chicken skin because we have those all black uniforms with the Tapa and the Nike, just like those glory days of University of Hawaii football. So what timing, impeccable timing for all of this to be released. We have you in studio and about to talk about that era of UH football.
And I'm going to verify that it was truly a chicken skin moment, because when Koo pulled up her sleeve, I was like, she's full on chicken skin. And that's going to be, I think, the reaction that people are going to see when we come out of that tunnel against Stanford, on August 23rd, and they see those uniforms again, and those beautiful, beautiful black uniforms, and the Tapa, and then you talk about two really iconic brands, and I put this out on social media today. Nike is the uniform, it's the shoe, it's what every young athlete wants to wear, and the Tapa H, hey, you can copy it University of Utah, and you can copy it San Diego State,
San Jose
State, and all these, but it don't belong to you. It belongs here. It's ours. And we're proud of it, and that H is the most, in my heart, the most iconic, or certainly one of the top most iconic logos in college sport.
Mm-hmm. Now, talk to us a little bit about, let's go back there and reminiscent and take us back in time to those glory days. And, well, you mentioned the coaching staff that was being put together, and that's why you wanted to be a part of it. And fortunately, it was in Hawaii, so your wife couldn't have been too upset with the $800 a month situation as a grad assistant. But then you were elevated to the defensive line coach and whatnot. But just kind of take us back there, and when you started to see like just the talent that was there on that team and how it all kind of came together and what it was like being a part of the coaching staff for that iconic time period for UH football.
Well, again, and when people ask me about it, I say that of all the things, 2 undefeated teams, 4 Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks, championships in professional football, I don't know how many bowl games, all that stuff that I've been fortunate enough to do in my career. The single most defining moment, the moment that I remember when if I fell over tomorrow and I was never going to coach another down, the thing I would take the most pride in was walking into Aloha Stadium with that H on my chest when we played USC in 2005. And that to me was a dream come true. And I still feel that way today when it's game day and you put that H on. I mean, you represent something that is so much bigger than yourself, so much bigger than a university. It's a state, it's a people, it's a culture, it's everything that makes Hawaii what it is. And it's almost, Hawaii to me is almost, you can't define it. It's just you either, and June said this when I came here in 2005. He said, you're either going to get it or you won't, right? Mm-hmm. And that's typically what I find when people come here. They either get it and they stay forever, or they're gone in 7 months and back on the mainland or wherever they come from. And I think, you look at that time, this is what's really cool to me, is I think, and I really firmly believe this, and I think I can lay claim to it a couple different ways. The 2005 team, June said to me when I came over, he said, I don't know, we might win 5 games, but I know we're going to have a lot of fun. And, well, that's how many games we won. But there was a defining moment with the 2005 team, and it was the last game of the year against San Diego State. And San Diego State came in here, and we beat their butts. And that was when it turned. That's when the players, I think, because here's the way great teams happen in every sport. I truly believe this. When the players take ownership and when the players have the belief, and the belief gets transferred from the coaches to the athletes, and then they take ownership of it. That team took ownership of it that night when we beat San Diego State. And all through the offseason, you could feel it start to build. If you remember, 06 came the next year, and we open at Alabama. And we're throwing the ball in the fourth quarter, trying to get it in the end zone to beat Alabama at Alabama. I'm not talking about Alabama State. I'm not talking about Alabama A&M or Southern Alabama. I'm talking about the guy, Bear Bryant, that University of Alabama, right? And that was, I think, the bet. If you ask me, I say this all the time. To me, the 06 team was a better team than the 07 team. The 06 team had a much tougher schedule than the 07 team did. But, I remember, the Leonard Peters and Akaika Lama Francis and Mel Purcell and, Colt really, in 05, he didn't even start the first game. It was Tyler Grunke had beaten him out, and then Colt kind of progressed over the course of the season. And then prior to San Diego State, I remember June saying that I think he's got it now. And this offense is you don't master it in a day, right? And it takes time, and all of those reps with Ryan Grice Mullen and young Devon Bess and all of the guys that we had. Well, all those reps just kept building and kept building and kept building and kept building. And I see this team much like that 05 team where we won 5 games, but we had a defining moment win in our last game. We went into the offseason with a win, not a bowl win, but a win. And it was a good win at home for our fans. And both of those teams, the 05 team and this past season, did that very same thing. I'm really anxious to see if this team can translate that into next year's success. So this 2025 team can do what that 06 team did. I look at our football team and I look at what the coaches have done to build each room individually. Like Ricky Medeiros, my graduate assistant, and I we're responsible for the defensive tackle room. Pooh Robinson has the edges, what we call the edges, the outside guys. CB's got the linebackers. PJ's got the DBs, Locke's got the safeties, and then over on the offense, it's the same thing, with Derek and the offensive line, and then Anthony's the coordinator, and you got Jared coaching the receivers, and Winterhawk Layton helping with the offense. So everybody's got a room that they're responsible to build, and you look at each of those individual rooms, and I think we're better in every room than we were last year. There's been players brought in. There's been players that have left. There's been, there's always transition in football, especially today in this world of college football. But I think our team is better. We bring in Coach Bobby Thomas, our strength coach, done an unbelievable job with our kids in the offseason. You look at our bodies today compared to what we were at the end of last season. It's some of these kids don't even look like the same guy, and that's again a real positive. These kids have bought into everything that Timmy's asked them to do. They work harder than and Thurman and I were, because like I said, we're kind of the old guys now. And we're sitting back and we were talking one day, and I said, Dennis, I swear to you, guys making $1 million a year don't work as hard as these kids that are playing for, a scholarship. Our kids' work habits are impeccable. And, again, now we got to be able to translate it on the field. But I think that's the fun part.
I think kind of reminiscent also to the past and looking at this team and that New Mexico game, almost feeling like that change of last season when we saw Micah Alejado and you're like, whoa, this offense looks so fun. And I think fans just got excited. And now you're just like, wow, this is what we can look forward to now going into this season. So it is kind of interesting where it's kind of that New Mexico game was like, wow. And then now we're getting excited for especially because we know the defense has been solid throughout the last few seasons. That's no question. It's kind of been the offense that has been a little up and down. But after what we saw to end last season, it kind of gets your hopes sky high once again to see what's going to happen this year.
Yeah, I think expectations, are up. And certainly they were, you go back to that 05 end of season win against San Diego State, and it was very much the same kind of game. We just blew them out, threw the ball all over the field. Micah, think about this. That was Micah's first start as a college football player. And to be able, I don't care if who you're playing, but to be able to go out and throw 5 touchdown passes and throw for over 400 yards and complete 70% of your balls and all of the things that he's did, none of those things are all indicative of a guy that understands what he's doing. You're not out just slinging it around. He understands where to go with the ball, when to get it out of his hand. He's very similar. You mentioned Doug, and Doug Flutie. He's very similar to Doug in a couple of ways. Number one, their stature. Number two, they move around in the pocket. Everybody says, well, you can't see with a short quarterback because all the linemen are 6'6". And first of all, you don't throw the ball over people. You throw the ball between people. And he has that ability to what we call slide in the pocket and find throwing lanes. And he knows where his receivers are. And all of the run and shoot is a repetition-based offense. It's thousands and thousands of reps. And I can remember June saying that. And when I coached receivers for June at SMU, we didn't have much individual time. Our individual time was running routes with the quarterback so that there was no question about what they saw, and the ball came out fast. And, you go back to the 05-06 team. Everybody who tried to blitz Colt, he cut them to ribbons because you couldn't get the pressure there fast enough. You can get a free guy. But now when you do that, you're locked up in man all over the field. And if your quarterback knows where to go with the ball and he's accurate with the football, which are two of Michael Alejado's strengths, in my opinion, then you really put the defense in stress.
I do want to bring up, we talked about that New Mexico game. I do want to say that one thing that's probably doesn't get brought up enough is that Michael Alejado, he outdueled Devin Dampier, who's now at Utah making a lot of money, but he outdueled that. And I will tell on our own Paul Breck because he's not in studio. He's on vacation, leaving us. But we walked into that senior night game against New Mexico. I think he was throwing up or he was feeling very sick. He felt a lot good after that game. So
so did all of us, because I think that was really an indication of what we could have in store for us. And I think you always got to tap the brakes a little bit on expectations with a young quarterback, because they're going to have days where they're not seeing the thing clearly as they would. But when you look at our football team, I think this football team has the makings of a team that can find ways to win football games. Not find ways to lose football games, but find ways to win football games. Some days it may be we got to beat somebody 17-10. And then there's other days where we're going to score 40 and we just got to keep them from scoring 40. So, it's whatever it takes. And that's really what it comes down to. Winning is, we would like to blow everybody out. But the bottom line is you got to get one more than they got and find a way. And I think that this is a team that'll find its way.
Ooh, there we go. Getting excited already, as if we weren't already excited about this upcoming football season. We do need to step aside for a quick break as we are joined in studio by UH Football defensive tackles coach Jeff Reinbold. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back in a couple minutes on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network.
Wake up in the den with Ku'ulei Agbayani on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760.
Welcome back to Wake Up in the Den. Ku'ulei Agbayani, Michael Iscaro, and UH Football defensive tackles coach Jeff Reinbold joining us in studio. So thank you guys for tuning in on 95.1 FM, AM 760, HawaiiSportsRadio.com, and streaming live on our YouTube channel. All right, before we continue on a little bit more about looking ahead at this upcoming season, because fans are excited, like we were mentioning in the first segment about how we saw Micah perform in that New Mexico game to end off last season, and seeing how it's somewhat similar to the 05 and the ending of that with San Diego State. But I wanted to kind of go back to that now 06, 07 seasons and that time period for University of Hawai'i football that you were a part of, and that 06 season, 11-3, and you're like, wow, all right, we have officially taken that turn. And then you get to 07, and that is the undefeated season that will live on forever in the memories of tons of University of Hawai'i football fans all across the country. People that's when that put UH football on the map. And again, yes, didn't have the performance that anybody would have wanted against Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, but nonetheless, it was just the pinnacle and something that at one point never thought that would ever happen for the University of Hawaii, because again, it's like we don't have the same resources that a Georgia has in Alabama, right? Like Hawaii, even till this day, like Hawaii is just very different and very unique on its own, and playing for an entire state and all of that. But take us back to that time, and we'll stick more with the 07 season, which, by the way, we did get a text earlier that did want to know which team you felt was better, that 06 or 07. And you said earlier that the 06 team might have been slightly better, and they just had a tougher schedule that particular year. But the 07 season, I mean, as the season was going on, and then when you got to the final regular season against UW, and knowing that was that's the undefeated team. Even before that, the second to the last game of the regular season, being a nationally ranked Boise State. Yeah, like take us back there, and then everything in the aura that was happening and going into Aloha Stadium and what that felt like from your perspective, because we all live in the memory as fans, but being inside the program, and maybe share whatever you can through the insights that were being said throughout that time within the locker room. But just share with all of our fans and our listeners just what that was like being a part of that very, very special undefeated season.
Well, I think that was born. The 07 season was born in a couple of moments in 06. Number one was when we went to Alabama, and we're driving late in the game to try and score a touchdown to win at Alabama. I think that was the point where the players really had evidence that they belonged, and they belonged on a national stage. They didn't just belong in the WAC. They belonged on a national stage. Then we're getting ready to play Arizona State in the bowl game, and there's a banquet. I don't know if anybody's ever told this story, but there's a banquet, I think it's 2 nights before the game, where they have both teams in the same ballroom, and the bands come in from both teams. And so Arizona State's first, and they asked the teams to do a skit. And Arizona State stood up, and they did a rap ballad, and it was kind of derogatory towards the WAC and UH. And I remember Tala, Sarah, and some of the guys, I'm looking and I'm going, ooh, right? Michael LaFelle, a number of the, the fellas, Josh Leonard, and, you could see it, that they didn't appreciate it. And then all of a sudden, they see our band about to enter, and they got up and called up a haka. And so instead of a hip-hop rendition of whatever they were doing at Arizona State, our kids got up and performed the haka right at the Arizona State team. And they got, they're moving tables to get closer to Arizona State. And you saw the faces on the Arizona State guys. And I'm telling you, I thought we were going to stack furniture right there in the ballroom. And the band came in, and they hit the theme from Hawai'i 5-0. And guys jumped up on their chairs and were like paddling their chairs it was a Jihu movement, and like Arizona State was like, uh-oh, right? now we've woken up somebody. And we went out and kicked their tail the next day. I mean, physically kicked their tail the next day. And I remember there was a play on the sideline, and I think it was Hercules Satelli came out, and there's a little corner from Arizona State was yapping on the sideline, just talking all day long. And Hercules came out on, I think it was a sweep play, and Nate Alawa got the ball, and Herc flattened this kid. I mean, if the kid walked off the field after that play and would have drank water, they'd have been spurting out of his chest because he had spike holes in his chest from Herc running over the top of it. And it happened right in front of our bench. And, that was a moment where you knew that our guys said, not only do we belong, we can dominate. And that translated into, wins against Purdue and wins against Boise State and scoring 60-some points. All the stuff that those two teams did. And then I remember vividly the Washington State game. We come in and the stadium's sold out. Here's the thing people got to understand. We averaged 43,000 people in the stadium that year. 35,000 in 06, but 43,000 people. So don't tell me fans won't come, right? They'll come, right? We got to give them a reason to come. But anyway, so we're playing Washington. They jump out to an early lead on us. We can't tackle Jake Locker. And, the biggest play of that game to me was they're lining up to kick a field goal to go up, would have been, I think, about 21 or 24 points at the end of the first. And Josh Leonard blocks it, right? And we get a little bit of momentum at the end of the half. By the end of the third quarter, I'm in the booth, and I look over at the Washington booth, and Kent Bear is the defensive coordinator from Washington. And when the run and shoot gets going, and it got going in the second half, if you remember, it's almost like it doesn't matter. You can't. You're not going to beat them, right? And so Kent took off his headset and sat it on the desk, and I don't know who was calling the defense because it didn't matter. We were everybody was going off, and that's just, that moment at the end of the game when the clock ticked down and the fans went on the field, and there were already the headlines from the Honolulu paper, people undefeated, and first time it ever happened in the history of the school, and The reason that I came back here was because if you experience that, you feel a responsibility to create it again for for these kids, for this generation of kids to experience, for this generation of fans to experience, for this state to experience. Because, and Timmy says it all the time, and it's so true. When we are winning, and this is no offense to any other sport, but when football wins at Hawaii, it's different. It's different here on Sunday and Monday morning. It's different when we're playing good and people are, it's Thursday and Friday, and now they're starting to talk about Boise's in this weekend or Fresno's coming this weekend, or it doesn't matter who's coming because they're going to get their ass kicked. Excuse my language. But that's what I want these kids to experience. I want these players to, Jemai and Michael and Jamar and all the guys that we got are great kids that do all the work. They work as hard as anybody in America. Now, hard work doesn't earn you anything, but I do believe that the payback is there. And if we're able to play the way I think we're capable of playing, then I think at the end of this season, there's going to be a lot of people really happy about the direction of the program and where we're going.
Woo! Fire it up. There you go. I love, and it's true because I feel like it has been far removed, and I felt like we got closer in 2019 when Rolo was here, and then obviously the pandemic happened, and that kind of screwed up everything, and yada yada yada. But even like there, it felt like it was so close to getting back to that moment. So I understand, and I appreciate that. That's why you came back, is just so that this next generation, and we've had discussions where a lot of this new generation now are like they pretty much they weren't alive for when all of that awesomeness was happening, or they were very young, right? Like, so they don't know what that feels like. And when you are a part of that, it is something so different and so special in Hawaii. One, because it's rare, and two, that's our professional team. Our state is really teeny tiny. Everyone knows somebody who's on the team, or they know the coaching staff, and a lot of the coaching staff either has long-standing local ties like yourself or are born and raised here, right? And you have like Pooh Robinson, who's from the island of Maui. So there's so much representation, and why I think it's so easy to get behind this team, and why because you're right, and no disrespect to any of the other sports, but there is just something so special about when football is succeeding. And you do have that moment that every single game, the expectation that we can win and we will continue to win and kick some butt along the way. But 100%, like, just to echo your point, because that's true, because that's what it feels like as us in the media. But also I grew up a fan. I grew up watching UH football with my dad when I was just a little girl, right? Like, you have all of this sentimental value that's tied behind the success of UH football.
And, and we say, in our room, we talk about, do you want to be good or do you want to be legendary? Well, there have been legendary moments in the past in this program when they went from the Termite Palace to Aloha Stadium, right? And it went from 10,000 people at a game to 55,000 people at a game. When you beat Iowa when they came in here, when you went to the Holiday Bowl and you beat Illinois, when, June turned it in 99, then the 06 and the 06 and 07 teams, like you mentioned, Rolo's 2000. We've had moments, and if you want to be legendary, then how cool would it be to be the team that brought it back, that brought it off its office? Because I'm going to tell you something, and I've never said this publicly, but I truly believe it. This thing was on its knees when Timmy took it over, because I came back and I looked. And Jesse Sapolo and I stood on the sideline when that first spring practice, and that team came out of the tunnel. And Jesse looked at me. He goes, "Where's all the big guys?" Right? They had mass defections. I mean, it was an absolute mess. It was on its knees and on life support. And Timmy has loved it and nurtured it and worked his tail off to bring it back. And I truly believe that we are right on the cusp of something really special.
I love to hear you say that because I feel like we have shared that sentiment here in that studio, but to hear someone who's within the program say it as well, it just bodes well to the expectation and the hope that we have for this upcoming season. All right, we do need to take a quick break, but we will be right back to continue our conversation with the UH Football defensive tackles coach, Jeff Reinbold, on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network.
Back to more Wake Up in the Den with Ku'ulei Agbayani on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760.
Welcome back to all of you, the beautiful list of all the beautiful people. It's Wake Up in the Den. I'm Ku'ulei Agbayani alongside Michael Lescaro on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM, AM 760, hawaiisportsradio.com, and streaming on our YouTube channel. And we've had quite the show today as we are joined in studio by UH Football defensive tackles coach Jeff Reinbold. All right, Coach. I mean, that was awesome going down at memory lane and talking about all that stuff. But I know our Michael Lescaro here is chomping at the bit to get into a little bit more of some of the X's and O's conversation and some of the other former players and whatnot. So I'm going to kick it over to Michael.
I bring it,
Yeah,
Michael.
well, Coach, got to give you a chance to talk about your position group, the defensive line. One last memory lane question, right? During your time when you were under Coach June Jones, you got to coach 3 NFL players that went to NFL: Ikaika Lama Francis, Mel Purcell, David Vakune, and you're also ranked in the top 20 recruiters by Rivals.com, and like the only coach that was from a non-BCS automatic qualifying team to be in that list. So, to
this day. So props
to you. But I do want to ask you about those 3 players. What was it? Did they just have it, or is something you help unlock? And you're certified with that, right? You can use that to help recruit the players coming in now.
Well, I think one of the things that we try and do in our room, and both Ricky and I feel like it's our kuleana, is that we need to teach these young guys, today's players, about the guys that came before them. We have a saying in the room: we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. Well, there's some pretty broad shoulders when you start talking about defensive linemen at this place, and then you go all the way back to John Woodcock, Larry Cole, the Nonga brothers. Ma'atana Vasa. I mean, it's amazing, really, when you really sort out this. I love quarterbacks, and I love putting them on their back more than anything. But I love quarterbacks. I love offensive guys. Yeah, you got to score points. But let me tell you something. This place is and will always be about defense. I mean, and it's just the way it is. These people love. You're talking about memories from 06 and 07. Katush, remember on the big screen when somebody would smack somebody, when Leonard Peters would go flying with that long hair, and that's UH football. I mean, you talk to the old guys and Dana Directo and Joe, like I said, Joe Sayumalo and Lance Samuel. I mean, I could give you a million names. Mike LaFayette. They're all legends, right? All legends. Well, now you look at that team, and it's interesting you said there were 12 guys in that room. This is something very few people know. There were 12 guys in that room. 7 of those 12 guys, over half of the players I had at that time signed NFL contracts, right? 3 of them ended up making it. A 4th one went to Canada and played in Canada. Well, that's an incredible statistic. That's half your room is signing in the NFL. 3 drafted, 1 in the 2nd round, 1 in the 6th, and 1 in the 3rd. That isn't coaching. You got to have talent. You got to have talented players. And you look where all of those players come. Were we lucky? Yes. We hit on some guys. Akai Kalama Francis never played high school football. He went to Kalaheo and played volleyball. His dad, Joe, wouldn't let him play, right? And so he came, and June saw him play in the state basketball tournament and gave him an opportunity. Joe said, nope, he hasn't earned it. He'll go walk on, and
Wow.
then he gets drafted in the 2nd round. Mel Purcell came as a tight end or a wide receiver. He weighed 205 pounds when he got off the plane from Samoa, and he ends up getting drafted by the Cleveland Browns at 285 pounds, right? He paid the price. He did the work. He lifted the weights. He did everything that you needed to do. Dave Vaikuni never started in a season where he was an all-WAC player because he didn't care. All he cared about was his contribution. And if his contribution was to go in and rush the passer on 3rd down and when Mike LaFayette would come off the field, hey, that was his job, and he went in and did it. And he did it at such a high level that he gets drafted in the 3rd round by the Cleveland Browns. That's not coaching. That's an environment where guys care more about their contribution than about their playing time, which is rare, and it's getting more rare all the time. But young athletes out there, Timmy talks about this all the time. Do you add value to your team, or are you a value vampire? You know what I'm saying? So are you adding value? David Vaikuni came to us. He had gone to Colorado, didn't like it, went to Fresno City, came to us, couldn't crack the lineup, but he created a niche for himself as a 3rd down pass rusher. And then he translated that into an NFL career. That's pretty special.
Well, this is kind of a little bit of a semi-personal question. We're going to get into the current defensive tackles room, right? But, this day of college era, transfer portal, it comes and goes, right? Players coming in, players coming out. Some of our players last year who did really well did go in the transfer portal. A lot of them came from the defensive tackles room, and I just want to kind of get your sense. Just how does that make you feel? I mean, like for me, of course I'm younger than you, but if I was in that situation, I would feel like, is it me? Why are they leaving? Or are you pretty much a veteran? Like you see it come and go, or it's also kind of like, if you want to leave Hawaii, that's on you. So what is your just on just some of those players and just kind of that feeling?
I think there's all of that, right? To be honest with you, Mike. First of all, you always have to be introspective and say, okay, well, am I contributing to this? Is there a reason, right? Then if there is, I got to get it straightened out. All right. Then you look at the reality of college football today. And again, I go back to Dennis and I. Like we talk about it this way. The transfer portal is nothing more than free agency. It's what we dealt with. I was in 32 pro seasons. I've seen them come and go. And I know that nothing is forever. And so you have to understand that if a player has an opportunity to make himself or make something better for him, he has a responsibility to go and do that. You look at those guys that left, as just decided it was enough. He had enough football. Dion got an opportunity to go to Boise State. If he wants to go to Boise State for more money, hey, that's your business. You go do that, right? We look at some of the rest of the guys. Some of it was, a family situation, right? I got a young baby. I need to be able to support my child. That's just the reality of football. That's the reality of life. Now, if they're going because they don't feel like they're cared about or any of those are then you worry about it. That's the stuff you got to get internally fixed. But when it's a guy making a decision to help out his family, you got an infant child, I mean, I remember when Mike LaFayette was playing for us in '06 and '07. He's a young dad, and Terry had to work. That sometimes they couldn't get uh, you know child care, and so Anello, who was just a little baby, I think it was Anello at the time, Mike could be changing his diaper in our defensive tackle room. I mean, that's just the way it was. Well, now kids don't have to struggle like that because, and this is the good thing with the portal, it does create an opportunity for a guy to go take care of his family, take care of himself. I think the players should get paid. I mean, you look at it and you think about that incredible amount of revenue that's generated by college sports. Well, it's always on the back of the player. The player has, I think, the right to put his services for sale. If you want to be real blunt about it, I mean, it's pro sports, and let's not call it anything it's not. And it's free agency, and so this is what people have to understand. We are in that world now, and so you have choices. You can either choose to compete in that world, or you can choose to say, "Nah, I'm not. We're not going to go down that road." I hope that the fans and the people here in this state, and I have complete belief that they will make the decision that it is important and that we have got to find a way to be competitive. And, that means we're going to need the support of everybody. And, what does that mean? Well, some people who have the opportunity that can create revenue for us, sign the big checks, if you will, they got to sign those big checks. And then we got to do it with every. I mean, I have seen so many things now that we're doing trying to create revenue for the department that are so good and so grassroots and all that stuff. But you do need some big hitters. We do need some big hitters if we're going to be competitive, because it's not going away and it's not going to get cheaper. And, will they put a salary cap on it? That's what they're talking about now, because I saw that you look at the big places and we want to compete with these guys. You're looking at $20 million and up, basically salary cap that they have, right? So they're working with those kinds of numbers. Now we're not anywhere close to that, but we're still finding a way, right? And we got to continue to find a way. I give, like Matt Chon, our general manager, and Timmy and Chris and all the guys that are involved in that stuff. I coach football, right? That's my job, right? But I give them an awful lot of credit how they've gone out and worked to try and create revenue streams so that we can give a kid an opportunity to come here not at a economic disadvantage, right? And I think that, people talk all the time about you got to get the local kids to stay home. Well, then you got to compete for the local kid, and the local kid and mom and dad are going to say just what every mother and father are going to say. Okay, I can get an education at both places, and I can get this much to go get an education at that place. Well, son, you're going there because they understand. It's a very short window, very small window that you have an opportunity to do this, and you have to strike while you can. And I would never tell any parent that that's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing if you can help your family.
One last question before I kick it back to Koo is talking about this year's defensive tackle room, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like Jamar Sakona, right? I remember when he got hurt, he would still come to practice in his crutches. I thought that was really positive to see as a team player, team leader. Aiden McCumber is kind of on the come up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you got some new guys coming in, Luther McCoy, DeJohn Benton. I think we just also got a new commit that's got 4 years to play, Jordan Lynch. So kind of talk about this year's room.
Well, I think we're really blessed. We got 10 kids in that room, and certainly every single one of them I love. I said this to my wife the other day that I've had a lot of rooms, been in a lot of locker rooms, on a lot of teams, but I don't know if I've ever had a group of kids that I love as much as these guys. Those 86 and 07 guys were close, but this is really a close unit. And I watch. You mentioned Jamar Sakona. I've seen some great leaders in my time. Mike LaFayette was an outstanding leader. Jamar Sakona rivals him. I mean, he has taken that room over, and he is the big brother to every single one of those guys. The fun part about the room is there's no egos. There's no overriding me. There's no. I mean, Luther McCoy comes from the University of Minnesota, plays in 2 bowl games in Minnesota, 2-time All Big Ten academic guy, wins all da 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 da. He comes in and he takes his place. All right, he brings things to us, but he doesn't try to run the room. Same thing, DeJean Benton. I don't know how 79 games at USC played, right? Da, 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 da. I can give you all the statistics, but the bottom line is they've all come together with a common goal, and that's to be as good as they can be and help us get to where I think we can go. We've got a really interesting room in that we've got 6 graduate students in the room. All right, we got 6 guys who've already gotten their degrees in the room. That is, to me, right, it reminds me of pro football, where you're getting an older guy. You're getting guys that are 23 and 24 years old that have been there, done that, seen it, know what it takes. And then we've now started to blend or, kind of layer in with that some young guys. Jordan Lynch is a 4-year transfer, a guy with 4 years of eligibility left to play. A guy that Iosefa Leituli, who played quarterback at Kaimuki, then went to BYU and has come back. I think he has a bright, bright future. His skill set reminds me of Akaika. And then you mentioned Aiden McComber, who was a really, really good high school player at Bishop Gorman. And, he's grown a tremendous amount in the last year that he's been with us in terms of his overall knowledge of the game, his techniques, and all that stuff. And, Josh Sangapulitele, who's a walk-on from St. Louis, I would not hesitate in a second to put him in the game. We found this guy, Vaipehe Winchester, from Iolani School, who comes out in the walk-on tryouts, and we give him a chance in the spring, and all the kid does is just perform so well. He made our 105. So top to bottom, I really like our room. And then, again, Quinnen Williams, who's a kid that played Division II at Ohio Dominican, and he's a 300-pound guy with a really great quickness, and I think he's going to have a tremendous year. So, Stoklinski, who played at Richmond for 4 years, he played in 2 national tournaments at Richmond, is a 300-pound guy. We're bigger, we're stronger, we're faster, we're more experienced, we're, I think, more mature. So all of the things that I think we need are in the room, and now we just got to continue to build and build and build.
There we go. Again, continuing or getting excited of this upcoming season. We do need to take our quick break. We'll be back to wrap it up here. I can't believe we're all done. I still feel like there's so much to talk about, but either way, we got to wrap it up. We'll be right back in a minute on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network.
Wake up in the den with Ku'ulei Agbayani on the Hawai'i Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760.
Welcome back to Wake Up in the Den. Ku'ulei Agbayani, Michael Iscaro, and joined in studio by Football defensive tackles coach Jeff Reinbold. All right, only got about 5 minutes left in the show. It has flown by, and again, we appreciate you for taking so much time out of your day after your meeting this morning with some of your players to join us. And I know everyone has had as much fun as we had kind of listening to all of your insight and experience and taking us down through memory lane. But since we only have a few minutes left, I just wanted to ask a quick fun question in general. And I don't think I know this. I mean, I know Timmy Chang is a San Francisco 49ers fan, but do you have a pro football team that you're a fan of? Because I know you're from Indiana, but then you're coached all over the place. But is there a particular team that you're a fan of?
I grew up as a little boy as a Detroit Lion fan because I wrote letters. Like I told you, I was ADD, so my mom was always trying to find things for me to do. So she said, write these teams letters and tell them you want stickers or whatever, right? So I did, and I remember the first package I got back was from the Detroit Lions, and so they were always my team. And then later on became a Raiders fan. Now I'm more of a fan of guys that I know or where friends are or players that I know, and really just a big fan of the game.
Yeah. Oh, I like that story. That's a good story of just that's the team that recognized me first and sent me the mail back. So that's why I'm going to be a fan. And that's what I was expecting, where you are kind of a fan of now following the different players. And I know that's just coaches in general. I know CB now has Roma Dunze there at the Chicago Bears. Woo woo, shout out Chicago. Yeah. I knew I'd get my Chicago Bears reference in, Michael. So I had to do that one way or another. All right. A few minutes left, though. I just want to start to really continue to give you the floor and close it out here, Coach Jeff. And just tell us, get us, as if you haven't already gotten us excited about this upcoming season, but share a little bit more insight about the preparation. Now, fall camp report is next week. Well, media days is this week. Fall camp report is next week. So you kind of already did it before about telling or requesting a lot of the fans to continue their support of the football program. But let's share a little bit more insight about this upcoming season and just your message to a lot of the University of Hawai'i football fans out there.
I think the number one thing, Ku'ulei, to take away is that we need everybody. We need this state. We don't want that. We need this state, right? We want kids. You want Hawaii kids to stay home and play in Hawaii? We need this state to step up so that we can make that possible. You want us to go to bowl games? We need your support. And your support is going to come in all different kinds of ways, right? But we need you, right? That's the bottom line. And everybody has a role. Everybody's on the team. Everybody has a responsibility. It's our kuleana as people who live in this state to understand that this is the flagship university. We are the University of Hawaii, the University of Hawaii. And so I think there's a great responsibility for us as players and coaches to understand that too. And you watch a guy like Peter Manuma play, and Peter gets it, right? And I think that you're going to see a team that's going to be fun to watch. I think you're going to see a team that's going to score points. I think you're going to see a team that'll be really aggressive on defense and play with the kind of hitting that Hawaii wants to see and opportunistic in special teams. And I say this when people ask me, I say, we're not where we want to be. We're not where we can be. We're maybe not even where we should be, but thank God we're not where we used to be. And that's my best way to say it.
That actually sounds like the most perfect way to say it, if I'm going to be honest, because I think even from the fan perspective, on the media perspective, we have noticed the upward trend, because you talked about it earlier, and it's no secret that, yes, when Coach Timmy took over, it was just coming off of everybody leaving, and we don't need to rehash why that happened, but it was a difficult time in the program to take over for Timmy Chang, and to see the upward trend going into this season now is just incredible. Well, just a little less than a minute left. Thank you so much, Mr. Jeff Reinbold, to hang out with us.
You guys have made it really, really easy. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the place that I love very much.
Yeah, and we look forward to chatting with you as we go into fall camp. I know Michael Liscaro will be there out at the field. You'll see him often. Unfortunately, myself and Paul will tend to be here in the studio, so we can't make it out to most of the fall camps, hopefully on the weekend. But as anticipated, that a lot of the practices will be open to the public, and we'll wait to get the detailed information for all of you out there. But yeah, we're just about wrapped it up here, and I think it's next week, Tuesday, right? Is fall camp report?
Yes, ma'am.
Woo! Let's go. And Mountain West Media Days this week. But until then, thank you again to Jeff Reinbold for joining us in studio. But for now, we got to go. For Michael Liscaro, I'm Ku'ulei Agbayani. Mahalo for listening. Bye!
Home of the Los Angeles Clippers, KGUAM K236CR is the Hawai'i Sports